the end of the day, we're going to sit back and watch what the Fed does, and we'll have to judge, you and I will have to judge as we move into the next year of whether or not this particular new playbook that the Fed is using is the right playbook to be using. Good morning. Welcome to Life in the Markets. My name is Tim Russell, and I'm here with Stephen Rohr. And we are here at the Life Financial Group, where we help Christians become even better stewards of all of their assets. Today is June 22nd, 2026, and it's the Monday after Father's Day. Stephen, did you have a good time with your girls?
I did. Wonderful time with my girls and my dad. How about you?
Excellent. It was a really beautiful day. Got beat by my boys in both of the activities that we did yesterday. How rude of them.
No mercy, even on Father's Day.
Yeah, bucket golf, not so good. They're schooling me. That's okay.
Yeah.
I got to get out there and practice some more. Well, today we're here to talk about what happened in the market last week. Last week was a shortened trading week. We had the Juneteenth holiday, so the markets were closed on Friday. But it was a positive day for the markets. I was actually listening to one commentator, and he said that now we've been up for 12 out of the last 13 weeks. Wow. And that to me is remarkable. If we're looking at the S&P 500, it was up just shy of 1%, which interestingly puts us on track for a 9.5% return year to date in the S&P 500. We're up 9% since the beginning of the Iran conflict. The equal weighted S&P was down about 0.8%, which puts us at roughly the same year-to-date return as the full normal S&P, and up about 2.5% to 2.4% since the conflict in Iran began. Looking at the NASDAQ was the leader this week. It was up 2.6%, so that tells us tech-related stocks had a very good week, and that hold on to yourself here. That puts the NASDAQ at 25.4% year-to-date return, which is remarkable to me. It kind of goes towards are things starting to get a little overpriced, certainly within the technology space. I have no opinion about whether it's overpriced or not, other than to say this is a lot of growth, and we're going to keep an eye on it. Since the Iran war, it's actually up about 22%. Russell 2000 also having a really great year. It's up almost 1% for the past few days, up almost 20% since the beginning of the year, and up 13% since the conflict in Iran started. Internationals, while still having a really good year, they struggled a little bit last week, down about a little bit more than 0.5%, up almost 9% since the beginning of the year. And since this Iran conflict started, interestingly, it's actually down. It's down almost 1%. Looking at gold was down, silver was down, oil was down. We like that, oil being down.
Yes.
Oil's now at $76 a barrel, which is a whole lot better than what it was earlier this year.
Yep. We'll take that.
We'll look at Bitcoin. Bitcoin was also down. And then on the positive side, we actually have the bonds that we track are actually going higher. So the ag bond, the high yield bond, all looking a little better.
Modestly, but better.
Yes. So if you're looking at the year-to-date basis, bonds are still down year-to-date, modestly down about 1 to 0.75% down. So it's kind of what we would expect given the inflation and the uncertainty that's going on. This is kind of normal bond activity. Looking at this past week, the drivers, we still have this memorandum of understanding, which is tenuously in place. There's some ongoing conflict this weekend with Iran stating that they're going to close the Strait of Hormuz, or that they've closed the Strait of Hormuz. They've got the White House saying no, ships are still going through, and that they are ready to, if Iran doesn't play ball, take over the Strait of Hormuz and set up its own tolling system to reimburse itself for the security it's offering to the region through allowing commerce to go through that particular body of water. We'll see. We also saw the Fed Chair Kevin Warsh in his first Fed meeting come out with some comments and notes, and we'll have some commentary on that here in a moment. But what's interesting is that the Fed had a very brief statement, not much in the way of forward guidance at all, and he struck what is generally considered a more hawkish stance. So I just wanted to pause for a minute as I wrote the words hawkish stance in the commentary for today's episode. I thought to myself, does everyone understand what exactly we mean by dovish or hawkish?
Normally, what comes to mind is someone's for war or against war.
Yeah.
But that doesn't apply with the Fed.
No.
So what does it apply to?
Yeah. So when we're speaking of something being dovish or hawkish, what we're talking about is whether or not the Fed is primarily focused on affordability and controlling inflation. If you're concerned about that, you tend to be hawkish. If you're more concerned about employment and economic growth, you tend to be dovish. So all of that has to do with interest rates. So if you really want to tackle inflation, if you want to make sure that the cost of living slows, the increase of the cost of living slows, you want to increase interest rates. That's considered a hawkish stance when it comes to the Fed. If you want to promote more employment and more economic expansion, which tends to be inflationary, when you want to increase more of that, then you have a dovish stance. You reduce interest rates, which tends to promote employment and promote economic expansion. So that's what we mean when we say the Fed is hawkish or the Fed has a more dovish stance.
It also is worth noting that the same person can be hawkish or dovish depending on what's going on in the economy.
Yeah, you talked about the dovish or hawkish stance like within Congress or the Senate, and that has something to do with war. Usually hawks are always for war and intervention, and doves are always for peace and appeasement. In the Fed, that's not the case. People will switch back and forth between hawkish or dovish stance based on what they think the economy actually needs.
Yeah.
And that's probably a good thing.
Correct. Yeah, it's good to be adjusting to the circumstances at hand. And on that note, the new Fed chair is setting the Fed on a different tack, an old tack. In fact, the tack that it used to be on for most of its history. The main thing is he does not want the market being swayed back and forth because of what the Fed may or may not do in the future. Now, this is what's called forward guidance. Since 2008, during Ben Bernanke's tenure, the Fed has leaned heavily on this tool of forward guidance, or announcing what its plans are for rate changes in the next 6, 9, even more, 12 months or more out. There are many pros and cons to this method. So on the pros side, the market does not like uncertainty. And having advance notice of what the Fed is going to do, it feels like certainty. But more on that in a moment. Another pro is that the market can price in the effects of the change to come. Now, because the market can adjust for the expected Fed action or inaction, as the case may be, some of the Fed's objectives can actually be partially achieved just by announcing what the policy will be without even doing anything. This is actually, it can be helpful at times. Are there any other pros that come to mind?
Yeah, so we're talking about good things that may come from the Fed being less expansive in its commentary. One of the things we often see every Fed statement day happens, 6 times a year, 7 times a year, is the Fed will release a statement. This is a written document. It goes out to the press, and the press sits down and they pore over this document, and what they're looking for are changes of single words. Well, he said this word so many times. He said that word so many times. He said it less times this time than he said last time. Therefore, maybe we need to read into this that they're really having this opinion about the market or that opinion about the market. They could also notice just slight additions of a word. If you have a statement and last quarter we said positive movement, and this time we say generally good in improvement. Well, oh my word, he didn't say good or positive. He said generally good, so maybe that means he thinks things are getting worse. So the tea leaf reading with the Fed statements really got a little obnoxious, because you can change words without necessarily meaning an entirely different thing. But it was a whole sport that was going on every time the Fed released the statement. So we aren't going to have those circus antics going on, which may mean that the news will have a little less to report on. And I think the news, if anything else, is going to be more negative towards this, which I look at as being a good thing.
Yes.
I'm in favor of that.
Yes. Some other cons to the forward guidance policy. A false sense of certainty. When the Fed announces its expected policy for 6, 9, 12 months or more, it can only base its plan on the current state of the economy and geopolitics. And when it comes to the economy and politics in general, ceteris paribus, all things being equal, is something that is often upended over a period of weeks, if not months.
Yeah. So stuff changes.
In other words, yes. The other thing is the Fed sometimes may feel tied to its promised action, because now changing it could cause even more market disruption than if the market didn't know in advance.
Yeah. Now, I would actually point to that as probably being the most significant con of not having forward guidance. Forward guidance, we talk about, allows the market to price in expected actions. And if we don't have that kind of forward guidance, the only thing the market can price in is actual actions.
Right.
So when the Fed does make a move, it could mean we have a little bit more volatility in the market as we try to absorb and react to surprises that the Fed may present to the market when it makes a move that the market was not expecting. So call it a con, call it just the way it works. It is part of the reality of a new stance for the Fed.
That's really what is going to be changing here under the new Fed chair. And he has specifically said, talking about policy as a means of creating policy has gotten out of hand, and it can create unintended or even counterproductive consequences, which I think there certainly are examples of that.
At the end of the day, we're going to sit back and watch what the Fed does, and we'll have to judge, you and I will have to judge as we move into the next year of whether or not this particular new playbook that the Fed is using is the right playbook to be using. Right now, my inclination is I'm excited to see where this goes. This, I think, could be a net positive for the overall economy. And I do think that Kevin Warsh is the right person for the job at the Fed. He should maintain the independence that the Fed needs while also being able to react to the markets in a probably a more confident, bolder way, less kind of muddling around and messing things up. Lord willing, we'll see. All right. One final note on the market as we kind of wrap up today's video. Last week, we saw the SpaceX stock continue to climb as investors jumped into the stock. We're talking about normal, everyday, run-of-the-mill people jumping in, wanting to own a piece of SpaceX, certainly because they saw that it has done well in the few days of trading that they have been able to observe. One caution that I want to present to you, the investing public, is just to remember that this stock is not settled in. We still have a number of people who may want to buy the stock in the public, eventually getting in and buying the stock, and the price is going to potentially continue to elevate while we have a bunch of people on the sidelines who want to get in, jump in. Once a lot of that has worked itself into the price and we get to a more normalized trading pattern, I would not be surprised. And I'm not trying to predict the future of what the stock will do or what the fair value of the stock really is. I do believe that there is a good chance that once we get to normal rhythm of trading, sellers may come in and push the market lower, which could be viewed as a negative thing, or conversely could create a more attractive entry point for people who want to buy the stock. So please don't chase a stock higher just because you're afraid of missing out. Usually the person who jumps in for fear of missing out is the one who buys at the top and who then gets left holding the bag as the sellers come in and the stock goes down. So follow prudent investment strategies and plans. And I would encourage you, if you want help to figure out how to invest in the market, how to invest according to your biblical convictions and according to your long-term goals, reach out to us here at the Life Financial Group. Contact us on our website, set up a meeting with one of our team members. Doesn't matter where you are in the country, as long as we have a license there. We're licensed in most states. We're able to visit with you, offer some advice, give you some help, and help you become an even better steward of all of your assets. As we wrap today, I wanted to share with you a verse about planning and trusting God, and I think this one is really good timing given what we're facing in the overall market. From Proverbs 16, verse 9, it says this: "The heart of a man plans his ways, but the Lord establishes his steps." This week, remember that wise and critical planning is necessary. We should plan, we should prepare, but we must ultimately trust the wise plans of God for our lives, for our portfolios, for our investing. Wise planning is necessary, but we have to hold those plans loosely. Let God be God and trust Him with the results. Until next time, take care, God bless, and be safe in the markets.
The topics discussed in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific investment advice or recommendations. Investing and investment strategies involve risk, including the potential loss of principal. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. All information herein is from sources believed reliable, but is not guaranteed for accuracy or completeness. The team assumes no liability for any errors, omissions, or actions taken based on this material. Information is as of the date stated and subject to change without notice. Securities and advisory services offered through Genius Wealth Management. Member FINRA and SIPC.